Hi, my name is Rod Cleef, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Multifamily Rock Stars. So as you guys know, this is where we interview people that are crushing it in this business, and we show you the inside scoop and how multifamily investors, and today is going to be a little different. This is not just multifamily, it's actually self-storage as well, but how they're creating massive success in their businesses and in their lives. And as always, I've got my co-host, who's the director of my massive action team for my Warrior Group on the call, Mark Nagy. Mark, what's up, brother?
Man, doing really well. Excited to hear the story today. I remember Brandon bringing him in a little over a year ago to the group. So excited to add some value to the listeners here. Nice.
Well, today we've got Brandon Hicks, and Brandon is invested in a couple hundred doors as a multifamily investor passively, but is active in self-storage. And I thought it would add value to you guys to have you hear Brandon's story and talk about, and then we'll get into why I think this is going to add value too. So Brandon, welcome, brother.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful to be here.
Absolutely. So why don't you take a minute and just tell a little bit about your story, how you got into this business, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work as a mechanical engineer for my day job. I've been doing that for about 9 years now. And it was back in 2020, I was working on new product development. And that's when COVID hit. Normally we would travel overseas and do our manufacturing, but we couldn't do that. We had to figure out a way to get around that without travel because of the restrictions. And that just resulted in a ton of work, working throughout the day, into the night, every night till like midnight, 1 a.m. And after doing that for a few months, I really started to kind of burn out and start to question, like, is this how I'm gonna, what my job is gonna be like for the rest of my life? Is there another way? Like, it was very controlling. And so I did something a little crazy. I decided to read a book, and I happened to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it was just all over the social media. And it just gave me an idea that, passive income, real estate, some things that I never really knew much about, just kind of being in the corporate world. And that sent me down the path of learning, reading books. I read your book and started listening to podcasts. And that's ultimately how I found your group and found real estate.
Nice. So you signed up in December of 2020, if I recall, into the Warrior program, right? So
That's
you've
right.
done a lot in a very quick amount of time here. I know that you're a passive investor in some multifamily. Was that tell me about that?
Yeah, so I think my first passive investment was maybe around the April timeframe, so about 3 to 4 months in the group, all with Warriors. So it was a 42 units in Ohio.
Okay. And now you're up over 200, I know. So I know you met a Warrior that's big in the self-storage space. And the reason I wanted to bring you on is I want you to talk about the value, the skill sets that you learned that you're able to apply to another asset class. This is not multifamily. I know it's a multifamily podcast, but talk about the skill sets that you need to learn for this business and how, those cross correlated to a different asset class like self-storage.
Yeah, so a lot of things apply, like the financing, very, very similar, the structure. So whether it's a joint venture or syndication, all very similar. Value add strategy, trying to find the little nuggets and where you can add some value. Maybe it wasn't managed properly. Maybe the rents are below market. So a lot of the principles that we talk about in multifamily apply in self-storage, just in a little bit different of a way.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, everything from, you said joint venture self-storage, you can syndicate self-storage, you can, the financing is similar. You raise money just like you would for for a multifamily deal. So you talk about the value add component. You can improve the facility and raise rents and just really use, similar really skill sets to get into this, to get into a different asset class. I mean, it doesn't have to be self-storage. Hell, it could be mobile home parks. It could be it could even be asset classes I'm a little leery of right now, like office or retail, but it applies to all of these asset classes. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Even the underwriting, all very,
right.
very similar, a little unique, but at a high level, very similar.
So for someone brand new into the business who's listening to this, obviously you were brand new about a year ago. How do you think people can really find their superpower to add value to a team, whether it is self-storage or multifamily or whatever? How do you think people can figure that out when they're getting started?
Good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, with my technical background, so I kind of looked at the different areas within real estate, or within even multifamily. So like acquisitions, investor relationships, asset management, kind of like at a high level. And I was like, well, what skill set do I already have that I could bring to the table to start adding value as quickly as possible? And for me, I thought that would be the underwriting, familiar with spreadsheets, familiar with numbers. I was like, okay, well, I can't just do the underwriting. So what if I find a deal and bring that to a sponsor? And that was something that I had learned, in the group is if you have a deal, if you have a really good deal, someone's going to want to help you close it. So I was reaching out to sponsors, people experienced in the group, finding out what their criteria was, and then how they like to underwrite, what their criteria is, and with a goal to bring them one of those deals and then partner with them and learn.
And is that what happened? You were actually able to locate a deal that you guys closed on, or is that just how you started?
That's how I started. For me,
Okay.
I was not actually able to do that in that time frame. But
Okay.
What I also started to do was, I knew that I could pick up the underwriting, but I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to only do. And so I started just trying out pieces of the business, like capital raise or a newsletter or like networking. I just started trying a bunch of things and seeing what really resonated with me and what actually brings me a lot of energy. And one of those is I really like to network with other warriors, with other investors, and I've started to consider capital raise for future deals.
No, that's great. Now, I'm sure that by sending deals to warriors or other operators, doesn't matter if they're warriors or not, you're building a relationship with those people, and they're like, okay, this guy's actually wants to work this and do this, and I'm sure that's how you got the interest of the people that you're partnered with now. And I don't want to name names, but you're partnered with some awesome people in the group, and so. Okay, no, that's very important. So good.
Now, I know you started passively, Brandon, in a few deals. Some warriors choose to do that, right? They want to start passively because they like to learn it and not necessarily take on the responsibility on their first deal. Obviously, some warriors go above and beyond with the education just because they like to help out other people. But what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned being a passive investor alongside some of these other warriors and students?
Yeah, so for me, I need to be involved and see how something goes. I feel like if I don't actually see that, then I don't fully get an understanding and a grasp of it. So just by being a passive investor, seeing how the money might get moved over, and then when you're on the calls with whoever your investor relation person is, or talking with the property manager, just seeing the conversations and how that all unfolds, just made it so much easier for me to understand the bigger picture as an LP investor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
love that.
So, actually, I just lost what I was going to say. Perry, cut this part out. Go ahead and ask your next question. Go ahead and ask your next question.
Yeah, no worries. So, Brandon, what are some actions that you take on a weekly basis, or maybe monthly, if you want to go there, that you think every listener should just get started with, some logical, actionable items that people can go and take and do today?
Yeah, so I've got a system in place right now that I actually really like, and I've integrated part of what Rod teaches as well here. So I identify the 3 or 4 major things that I want to be working on. So I have my goals, and then I'm basically taking my goals and working them down backwards to actionable steps. So for me, that's finding real estate deals is one. Another one is, so I'm actually training for a marathon right now and raising money for a fundraiser in the process. So those are a lot of big things that I'm working on. So I have 2 to 3 things, and then I brainstorm on Sunday everything that I could be doing this week for those specific, let's call them work streams. And then I pick the top 2 or 3 that I think are going to have the biggest kind of bang for your buck, the kind of using the 80-20 method, because there's only so many things I can do in a week, and I want to make sure that I'm doing the highest value items. So I figure those out in the beginning of the week. I put everything into my calendar: lunch, dinner, family time, my runs, what I'll be doing for fundraising, all of that. And then I start to block that time. And then I make sure that I get that done by the end of the week. I learned from Jesse Itzler, think in terms of weeks. Sometimes something comes up in the middle of the day and you might not get to what you planned for. And I would be hard on myself if I didn't. But when you plan in a week, you give yourself a little bit more leeway. You have a little bit more time to get those things done. And then I make sure that I get those done by the end of the week.
Now, real quick, I know you talked about a strategy there of setting a goal and then working your way backwards. That's an awesome strategy. Some people might not be familiar with that. Could you elaborate on what that kind of means in terms of multifamily, if you could?
Yeah. So, you hear operators talk about how many leads they have to talk to before they close a deal. So let's say I wanted to close 4 deals this year, and that means, you got to look at 200 deals to close 1. So I'd say, okay, I need to look at 800 deals this year. But what percentage? So then I would work backwards from there. If I want 4 deals, what's my let's say, maybe we'll do it the other way. So I've got 800 leads, and then how many of those am I going to put an LOI in? Okay. And then how many of those are going to actually go under contract? And then how many of those are actually going to close? And over time, you'll learn what those percentages are. And then you can set your target number throughout the year and then work towards that.
Nice. Yep. You're back into it. Yeah. And by the way, your little weekly planning thing sounded very familiar. I actually teach a version of that. That's where you do it a week at a time. Jesse's awesome. I got to see him speak with his wife, Sarah Blakely, at a mastermind that got to meet them. They're beautiful people. So that planning process, guys, just so you know, is at a high level, very fast. By the way, I did this with my goal setting workshop that I did on January 1st on my Rod Cleef official Facebook page. I did that process. If you want to see it, just DM me on any social channel and I'll see that you get the link. But, it basically just involves being very clear on what your priorities are, having a thinking list, a list of things that you're high level things that you have to think about on a weekly basis, creating a task list. And there's some other steps in here, but I'm really abbreviating it quickly here. You create a task list, but then you do what Brandon said. You identify that 20% that'll get you 80% further, and that's the Pareto principle. They're always there. Those are things that will get you further faster, and then you block time for those. Now you have a W-2 job, right? Still full-time job. Do you have a family? Do you have kids? I don't know what your personal situation is.
I'm engaged. No kids.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So I mean, you have a life outside of work too. You've got a fiance. You're doing this marathon. Kudos to you. And the real thing, kudos to you, is the fact that you're doing something charitable. And guys, I don't know what it is about Warriors, and I seem to attract people that want to help other people, and that's the beautiful thing about our Warrior group. In fact, let me mention this: if you have an interest in applying, text the word CRUSH to 72345. This is applying to our Warrior group. My students now own well over 50,000 doors, and I've only been teaching 4 years, and it could be significantly more than that. That's all we track it very loosely. But if you're interested in applying to the Warrior program, text the word CRUSH to 72345. It's, we check you out, you check us out to see if it's a fit. So what's next for you, buddy? You're going to double down on the self-storage? Are you still looking at multifamily? Give us an idea of what's next for you.
Yeah, so I'm doing a little bit of both. So I still do the underwriting, and I'm still trying to add as much value as I can. So there's several Warriors that I work with who find deals but need help with the underwriting, and I've seen a lot of value in that. It's like once I started partnering with one Warrior, we found I was hesitant or I would procrastinate on calling the broker or the city or the local police department to learn more about the deal. And he jumped right in on that. Whereas he would kind of hesitate on the underwriting, and I would just jump right in on that. So we found that, that worked really well. So I still do that as deals come up that they think are worth taking a look at. And then also working with other Warriors on self-storage. So growing out my portfolio there.
Nice. Yeah. And what I want to flag something that Brandon just said, and that is he found where he could add the most value. And there's so many different places you can add value in this business, like underwriting would be Brandon's, but there's also, relationship building. If you've got some sales background or some if you're a good communicator, just building relationships with brokers, potential investors, and the like. There's asset management after the fact. If you managed anything, that ties into asset management and project management, for example. If you've got some experience doing that, or just managing people in general, you can asset manage. And so, there's you can bring money to a deal. You can bring the at-risk capital to a deal. You can just bird dog and find deals. So there's a lot of different places that you can add value. And Brandon has settled into help, adding value to other people in the Warrior Group. And so he's seeing all these deals come across his desk, and certainly can participate in deals that make sense. Now, of course, we're kissing a lot of frogs right now to find a deal, obviously, but you still, and you have to. But here's the other thing. Yes, and I get complaints sometimes, even from Warriors on occasion. I'm looking at so many deals, and I haven't been able to find one that pencils out yet. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you're getting better every single freaking day. You're getting better at this, and it's not always going to be crazy like it is right now. It's definitely, at some point there's going to be a pullback, and I think it maybe actually even started a little bit, but. Yeah,
I've got one more example for value add that also kind of that I learned from multifamily that I've applied over to self-storage, and that's off-market deals. So one of the Warriors had expressed that he was focused on market but not off market, and I was like, that might be a place that I could add some value. And there's a lot of work to find off-market deals, so I've been putting that system in place, but it is almost essentially the same as what we've learned within the Warrior Group to find off-market apartment deals or multifamily deals. It's just about the same. I'm just doing it for a different asset class. And so, yeah. And one of the things that I learned throughout this process of building this system for several months, one, I find that I actually really like to build systems, but the first system I built was more like, I think back to the book Turning Pro, amateur versus pro. I was in the business. I kind of built myself a job in the business, and then I went away to our Warrior event, and then nothing happened with my system because I was not able to work in the business. And so I realized, okay, this is really not a system here. And so what I ended up doing is hiring a virtual assistant. I had that fear of like, well, how much money is this? This is going to cost X, Y, and Z. And I started the whole analysis paralysis thing. Like, should I do this? It's going to cost so much money. And I said, you know what? Commit for 6 months, put the system in place. And we've been working together for 4 weeks now. And she basically runs the whole system, and I do 1 to 2 hours a week. And I'm so glad I pushed through that. The time leverage, it just creating my own system, it just really gets me excited and energized. And I'm glad I pushed through and did that.
Good for you. You pushed yourself. And guys, the quality of your life, this is a Tony Robbins quote, is in direct proportion to the amount of discomfort that you can take on. And you pushed yourself, and that's freaking awesome. And the fact that you got a VA, and we teach, in our course materials as a Warrior, we teach you how to do that. And you took advantage. And you mentioned Turning Pro. One of, my love language is gifts, guys. And my Warriors get gifts from me, practically on a monthly basis. And one of them is the book Turning Pro from Stephen Pressman, how you take your life and you stop being a freaking amateur and you become a professional. You want to be a success in anything, you become a professional. And so that's why that's one of the first books we send out. I'm glad that you got value out of it, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. We've come a long way in a year, Brandon. I know you mentioned, you were only listening for maybe 3-4 months before you kind of got started, jumped into this thing, which, as an engineer, analytical, maybe, a lot of people that I talk to maybe listen for 3 to 4 years before they decide to take action. But how did you overcome that fear so quickly when you first got started?
It's funny what really pulled me in was the sometimes, Rod, you say analysis paralysis folks, and I was like, oh my God, he's speaking to me. I do a lot of thinking and not taking a lot of action. And I was describing that to somebody else who was thinking about the group, and they're like, man, you took action on joining the group really quickly. And I was like, well, it was probably the right timing for me. I had just come off of that really challenging work year, and I knew I wanted to learn something else, and it's probably the right place at the right time. But I kind of needed to know myself. I've thought about some other ventures in the past, and I would think about them and do a little bit of research, but not take action. And my concern was that I would think a lot about real estate and not take any action. And I knew for me, I needed the coaching. That's really what got me over that hump, and jumping in has gotten me there. So that's why I ended up making that leap.
Let me ask you this. What do you think are some good questions that someone might want to ask themselves about getting into this business?
Yeah, I think why do you want to get into the business? What is it that you want from it? Is it time freedom? Is it financial freedom? What is it? Because if you don't have a strong enough why, then you won't stick with it. For me, it's that time freedom and the ability to have more control over my life. Be fully in control of my time and my finances. And that's what drives me to keep on going. This is real, like I mentioned, I had tried a few other ventures and I didn't stick with them very long. And this is by far the longest I've stuck with a venture. And I know that this isn't going to change because my why is strong enough. And
guys, I already mentioned my goal setting workshop. There's a reason that that's the first thing we do at my boot camps. By the way, I've got a virtual boot camp coming up here, March 12th and 13th. If you haven't registered, it's like peanuts to come. I don't sell anything there. It's just 18 hours of training. So make sure you look into that. It's multifamilyvirtualbootcamp.com, or you can text multifamily to 72345, or I think you can even text Rod Live as one word to 72345. But the reason that first thing we do is goal setting is because you've got to have that burning desire, like Napoleon Hill talks about in his book, Think and Grow Rich. So, I wanted to just hammer that point home because that's the biggest thing. You guys have heard me say it ad nauseum. 80 to 90% of this is psychology and mindset. You have to take action. You have to push through analysis paralysis, like Brandon, you have so successfully done. So, yeah.
You said an interesting thing real quick there, Brandon, is that you said you had a rough year and then you jumped into multifamily. So many people would use a rough time in their W-2 to be a reason to not take action. They might say, oh, I got to get things, finish up some projects, get better at my job before I pull the trigger on multifamily. But you used it as opposite, as motivation. Was it really the goals that helped you do, or what did push you through that, where a lot of people would use that as a excuse, frankly?
Yeah, that one's a tough one. For many years, I definitely had the limiting beliefs and somewhat of a victim mindset. I hate to say it, but I used to think that successful people just got there because they were lucky, or rich people were there because they were lucky. And I was like, well, I'm a hard worker and I'm smart. Why am I not getting ahead? And it just never made sense to me. I remember I was coming home from a vacation. I was looking at a marina and I saw these huge, beautiful boats. And I was like, and the question, why not me? More from a positive perspective, I could do this. Why couldn't I have that? And there was that, I still vividly remember that. And it was just a little bit of a shift that, as opposed to oh, poor me, why not me? There was a little bit of a shift there, and I don't know where that came from. It might have just been the year that I had, and hey, you got to do something different than what you've been doing to get the results that you've been dreaming of. So I think it was just a combination of all of that.
Yeah, one of the questions that I like to ask is, did you have an epiphany? And it sounds like that was a bit of an epiphany for you. You went out and got Rich Dad Poor Dad, which changed, millions of people's lives, about income and passive income versus active income and so on and so forth, and all the things that he teaches. But you maybe even, for me, a big motivator is disgust, to maybe get a little disgusted with what's happening. Does that resonate at all?
It does. I mean, I was just, I would have considered myself, I do consider myself to be a very hard worker. I didn't understand what burnout was when people would say they were burnout. And then I went through it and I was like, oh, I see how this is. And it just really impacted me. If I did a time wheel, or not a life wheel, where your finances, your health, your wealth, all of these things. And my finances and my career were very strong, and everything else, my health, my family, my friends, all suffered because I was so focused on that one thing. And that I vow that I will never let that happen again. I've got in my calendar that we're going to have dinner together. We're going to have family time together. I'm going to prioritize these things. I'm not going to let that happen again. So I think I needed to get to that place for me to make that change.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Yeah, we do that wheel at my events as well, just because it's so important for you to see that visually. And you know how I feel about that stuff. I mean, I talk about the fact that my biggest regret in life was, coming home and playing with my kids, but I wasn't there mentally. Greatest regret to this day with my kids who are, they're old and older, much older than they're 30 and 26. They're not young anymore is my point. But they said I was a great dad, but nobody needs to have those sorts of regrets. You getting into a new relationship, into a committed relationship, ultimately kids, so important that you keep those priorities top of mind. Well, listen, brother, I appreciate you coming on and spending a little time with us, and super impressed with what you've accomplished in the short amount of time you've been with us, my friend. So thank you for coming on, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Brennan.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345, and we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345.